Welcome to Say More from Boston Globe Opinion. I'm Shirley Leung. You ever take a friend for granted and then find out they're actually really, really mad at you? I'm afraid that's what's happening between the U.S. and Canada right now. It all started with President Trump talking about imposing big tariffs on Canadian goods. Then there was talk of Canada becoming our 51st state. In the U.S., late-night hosts have been having a field day.
Canada? We're picking a fight with our most reliable and pleasant friend, the labradoodle of allies?
What will this do to the longest continuous peaceful border in the world? How will this affect our cooperation with a vital NATO ally? What will this do to our relationship with our imaginary girlfriend from camp? Her name's Mackenzie, and she's a model.
But the longer this tiff with Canada drags on, the less funny it gets. What does it mean for the U.S. to be alienating its closest ally? Later in the episode, I'm going to talk to Canadian journalist Stephen Marche about what this moment means for U.S.-Canada relations. But first, I'm in the studio with Say More producer Anna Kusmer to talk about what she's been hearing from Canadians. Anna, welcome to Say More.
Hi, Shirley.
So, you have a lot of ties to Canada, right?
Yeah, Canada is very near and dear to my heart. I went to college in Montreal and lived there for 6 years. My husband is a dual Canadian citizen, which means my kid is a Canadian citizen as well. A lot of friends there, and I go a lot. I am proud to say that I have traveled almost every inch of the Trans-Canada Highway. I've traveled extensively in Canada from the Yukon, Northwest Territories, all the way to Newfoundland. So I've really traveled around Canada, and I love the country. I spent a lot of time there.
Wow, you're like an honorary Canadian.
I like to think I am. I'm not allowed to call myself that, but if any of my Canadian friends want to pipe up and give me that title, I'm very, very honored to have it.
So you still have a lot of friends in Canada. So what have you been hearing from them?
People I know have been going to protests at U.S. embassies and bringing their kids. I get a lot of texts from my Canadian friends saying things like, "What is wrong with your country?" or like, "What's going on over there?" And to be honest, when they send those texts, I don't even know what they're referring to. I'm like, can you just specify what news item you're referring to? Because I look on the news and I'm like, there's probably at least 4 or 5 headlines they could be reacting to. We have a Canadian colleague here who says her family won't come to visit her. They won't even cross the border to come see her. If you dare to go into Canadian social media, you will be surprised about how passionately people feel about this and just all of the memes going around being shared among Canadians. There is a classic Molson beer ad, which is a Canadian beer that came out in 2000 that is kind of all about Canadian pride.
Hey, I'm not a lumberjack or a fur trader, and I don't live in an igloo or eat blubber or own a dog sled. And I don't know Jimmy, Sally, or Susie from Canada, although I'm certain they're really, really nice. I have a prime minister, not a president. I speak English and French, not American.
The guy, Jeff Douglas, who made it, re-released it with new language, which is entirely directed at the U.S.
They mistake our modesty for meekness, our kindness for consent.
It ends with this extremely dramatic moment.
But we are not the 51st anything. We are the first to unite in a crisis, the first to build bridges, not walls, and the first to stand on guard for thee. My name is Jeff, and we are Canadian.
Rousing, right?
Rousing.
Going through all this stuff, it's pretty clear that it's Trump specifically that's the object of Canadian ire. There's a lot of talk about how, we don't hate Americans. It's the government that's the problem. The new Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney, he really came out swinging. He just has been Prime Minister for a couple weeks. Here he is at a press conference earlier this week.
President Trump claims that Canada isn't a real country. He wants to break us so America can own us. We will not let that happen.
So what really strikes me about this is that he is taking Trump to task specifically, constantly referring to Trump by name. This is a huge contrast from Trump's first term, where Trudeau and Trump obviously didn't get along very well. But Trudeau never really went after Trump, like, specifically, whereas now all the rhetoric is, like, entirely calling out Trump by name and essentially labeling him as an enemy of the Canadian people, and that to me is really striking. One last thing I will say is that there's all this kind of hockey talk. There's this term, elbows up. Have you heard this, Shirley?
I'm only learning this now through this fight between US and Canada.
Yeah. So it's a term in hockey that's used to describe this defensive move that a player will do if they're being attacked. And now, elbows up is this slogan that Canadians are embracing directed at the US. It's like, okay, Canadians, let's get in formation here. Elbows up. Let's defend ourselves. Even though a lot of Canadians are able to create these kind of funny memes, I think we should not discount how deadly serious people are about this.
Another thing that is very real is the economy. What Trump is doing, threatening these tariffs, it could really send Canada into a recession, right? That could also hurt the New England economy as well, because Canada is its largest trading partner. So what do you think of the impact on us here?
Yeah, the New England economy is extremely reliant on imports from Canada. It's New England's largest trading partner. Things like fuel oil, seafood, precious metals, natural gas. And there are a lot of products like airplanes, seafood products, wood products that cross back and forth across the border. So there's like one phase of manufacturing that's in Canada, one in the US. There are all these industries that could potentially be extremely disrupted by that border becoming less easy to cross or expensive to cross. There's also a lot of random stuff. The Canadian consulate says that 90% of Logan Airport's jet fuel comes from Canada. I mean, you can only imagine
Wow.
what the potential impact could be. Are prices going to go up? Because right now the plan is 10% tariffs on energy imports from Canada.
I mean, also tourists, Canadian tourists. Massachusetts relies on tourism from Canada. I think this year, Massachusetts had expected a record number of tourists, 880,000, but they're probably not going to hit a record this year because you have leaders in Canada telling Canadians don't come to the U.S. So I think hotels here, a lot of the tourist attractions, they're bracing for what potentially could be an unexpected slowdown. I mean, they were supposed to get a record number of tourists this year from Canada, but now probably not.
And it's going to be very, very location specific. Thousands of Canadians will go to, say, a town in Maine called Old Orchard Beach. And I saw a recent interview, I think it was a hotel owner that said that he went from being entirely booked over the summer to having like hundreds and hundreds of cancellations. Very specific places are going to be hit extremely hard because they're very, very integrated with Canada now because of higher prices or just like really bad vibes from the Canadians to the US. People are going to cancel their trips. They're going to stop wanting to play with the US. And certain people are going to be devastated by that for sure.
And I guess the concern is, will this just be, a short-term thing, or will this, will the Canadians leave us for a long, long time?
I hold the country and its people in such high esteem. It's almost embarrassing to imagine that one U.S. president could fumble such a long-term good relationship. And for someone like me, who I went to college there, I've spent tons of time there. I mean, it's meant so much to me. So what does that mean for the next generation? If relations are not good, like, is that going to be a rarer or harder experience to spend time there? That's just very sad for the U.S.
Well, Anna, keep your chin up on U.S.-Canada relations. Maybe we'll all come around.
I will not only keep my chin up, Shirley, I will also, in solidarity, be keeping my elbows up because I stand with my Canadian brothers and sisters in this. Literally, elbows up.
Elbows up.
Okay, thanks, Shirley. Thanks so much for having me on.
After a short break, I'm going to connect with Canadian journalist Stephen Marche, so stay with us. Hi, welcome back to Say More. I'm now here with Canadian journalist and author Stephen Marche, who is joining us from Toronto. Stephen has written extensively about American politics. Stephen, welcome to Say More.
Pleasure to be with you, Shirley.
I heard it's snowing up there.
Yeah, it is now. There's a little bit of snow coming down, unfortunately. But it's not the end of March, so, that's pretty normal for us.
We would be freaking out in Boston if it were snowing right now. So, Stephen, tell me about this moment in U.S. Canada relations. How big of a deal is it?
I think it's probably the largest moment in Canadian identity since the founding of the country. I don't think it would be an exaggeration to say that. I think the entire nature of the relationship with America has been basically altered overnight. And because of that, it's going to have profound changes to our entire economic, political, military, geopolitical structure. These things are all being negotiated incredibly quickly in a frankly shocking degree of unity and solidarity by the Canadian people. I mean, there's really never been anything like it in my lifetime.
I mean, you follow politics on both sides, right? In
Yeah.
Canada and America. What do you think about how Americans are viewing what's going on with Trump's war, quote unquote, war with Canada? Talk about what you're seeing from both sides.
Look, I have a very close friend, dear friend who writes for the New York Times, who was like, we were going to go to her 50th birthday party in Cape Cod this summer. And we're like, well, we're not coming anymore. And I mean, this is a very, very informed person. This is probably about as informed as it gets in the American public. And she was like, well, you can't really be serious. And we were like, we said to her, like, Ukrainians did not go to Russia for vacation before the invasion. Like that, like every dollar that a Canadian spends on an American source is a dollar that could be used to enslave us. And that is the footing that we are on. And I think, Americans famously don't really have a grasp of foreign policy. And so it's not really a surprise to me that they would not have a grasp on Canada or on on what that situation is. But like you are ending your greatest alliance in your whole history, and one that has an immense amount to do with your national security, and you don't really seem to be noticing. Now, obviously this is part of the flood the zone strategy of the early Trump administration, where there's just so much chaos and so much destruction going on in American institutional life that, it's hard to notice all of it, right? It's hard to even pay attention to all of it. But, certainly it is a very drastic thing. I mean, I think it is a fundamental change in America's relationship to the entire earth.
So there's a long list of events that led to this moment. We have Trump, threatening tariffs. We have accusations of poor border control. Trump saying, again, making Canada the 51st state. I mean, even Canadians are being held by ICE at the border. Was there something in particular that you feel escalated the feeling of betrayal felt by Canadians?
The betrayal is actually not that big a deal. Like, I think when you're dealing with the United States, you get used to betrayal. Like, it's a big country, and it's Pierre Trudeau, who was Justin Trudeau's father and was our sort of very important prime minister in the 60s, when in the first bout of Canadian nationalism, he famously said that living next to America was like sleeping beside an elephant. Like, every turn, you feel it. Right. Like, doesn't matter how nice the animal is, every turn you feel it. I think there were three things that really change things. So one was the tariffs, which, is trade war, and that's something. And then it became clear by our own political offices that Trump's plans for annexation and Trump's to change the border, he was in fact very serious about, and was saying this at senior levels of diplomatic correspondence, and that this was something that was not just talk. That was really the turning point. That was when we were like, well, we're no longer allies of the United States. And then, of course, when he said that he was going to take the F-35s and, there would be a kill switch, or they would deny parts to the manufacturer, to other countries that bought it, because, as he said, sometimes allies aren't allies anymore. That was the moment where it became clear, like, okay, we are no longer in the American military sphere. Like, we've just been told that we're not in the American military sphere. So we need to, get our own nuclear weapons, and we need to possibly consider things like conscription, and we need to remilitarize in preparation for an America that is an aggressor against us, and that we will have to fight off to preserve our liberty. That's a very big turn for our country.
Just to be clear, I mean, for Americans, I mean, Trump has threatened tariffs for a long time, but
Yeah.
everything else, the annexation, denying, parts for military aircraft, I mean, that's all new to us. And I think, frankly, if you talk to most Americans, they would still think he's not serious about it.
If you look in the polls, like 2% of Americans are in favor of conquering Canada. 90% of Canadians don't want to become Americans, right? Like there's no interest here whatsoever in becoming America, particularly the America of today. But, your population can obviously been talked into a lot of nonsense. Right. Like, and your country has a long history of destabilizing democracies all over the world. Right. And your country has a long history of invading countries and then leaving them just in ruins. Reagan said we're kin. And I think we have a real true kinship relationship. Like, I was a columnist at Esquire for 8 years. Like I lived in New York. I taught in New York. I have my Trump voting cousin in Washington State, and almost every Canadian literally has a family relationship with somebody in America. And there's lots of, until I was in my late 30s, you did not need a passport to enter America. Right. Like you waved at the border when you went to America. So this sudden, very, very drastic turn, it's a bit like your big brother who never thought about you very much became addicted to meth and showed up at your door with a knife asking for money. Like the first feeling is terror. And then the next feeling is disgust, followed by residual sadness. Like it's
And a sense of helplessness, right? There's nothing you can do about it.
Oh, no, we're not helpless. There's lots we can do. It's you guys who are helpless. You have a political system that can't respond to reality or to anything that you want to do. We actually have a functioning political system where we absolutely are not helpless. Like we passed the interprovincial trade barriers, which they've been trying to do for 2 generations. Like my grandparents' generation was trying to do that. They did that overnight last week. Right. Like we're going to expand our markets to China. We're going to expand our markets to Europe. We're probably going to, we already have security cooperation agreements with Europe. We are not helpless.
But, so is there a sense that maybe ultimately this will be good for Canada? This sudden change?
I don't know if it's good. I mean, it's a lot more patriotic. Like Canada's not a flag waving country. Now it is. And also we spent like 10 years under Trudeau arguing about this kind of post-national reality of trying to figure out what role national identity served in a multicultural society. It's all done, right? Like it's now back to straight nationalism. I don't know if you would consider that a benefit. It can't be a benefit. We're under threat. That's why we're suddenly so united. But definitely there is a level of unity and solidarity here that I certainly would not have predicted.
One of the things that struck me is that, you talked a little bit about Canada thinking about getting nuclear weapons. And you also have said that Canadians are generally concerned about the U.S. could use some military action against the country. So talk more about how Canada is going to be arming itself. I mean, is that actively happening?
It's definitely being widely discussed how to become a nuclear power and how to, I think what's that American expression, an armed society is a polite society. Like, I think all this talk of annexation would stop pretty quickly, if we were a nuclear power. I think literally everything is on the table for Canada. This is considered here an existential threat. Right. And America is an existential threat to us. I trust I don't need to explain to the people of Boston the value of liberty. Right. Like, I mean, a city that is literally a byword for fiery independence. Like, I don't think I need to explain that there's no price that's not worth paying for freedom. And I think we're discussing exactly how we guarantee that freedom. And part of that solution is definitely military.
So Canada historically has also relied on the U.S. for trade. I think close to like 80% of Canadian exports are bound for the U.S.
That's right.
Are you guys talking about or bracing for an economic recession?
Yes, you're going to hit us in the face, and we're going to take punishment. Everyone is under the impression that we are going to be in recession and that we are going to be hurt. I mean, we are transitioning as fast as we can to sell our oil to China and to sell our oil to Europe. It's a little harder to Europe, but we will be able to sell it to China with a pipeline to the West Coast, which again was a real sticking point for national unity for many decades and has basically been resolved by this threat. And we need closer relationships with all the other world powers, basically, in particular Europe. But yeah, like we're definitely going to go through a very brutal time economically. There's absolutely no question about it.
Because Trump can be very fickle. I mean, what if in April he decided, never mind, let's be friends again? I mean, well, is it too late? Is there no turning back here for Canada and for America?
No, we've learned our lesson, right? Like if you're the friend of America, that's a very precarious position to be in. Like at this point in history, like you don't want to be America's friend. You want to be respected by them, and being vulnerable to them is no way to get respect. And the economic pain that we're about to go through, that will be entirely blamed on American political insanity and will create a generation of resentment. The last time Canadian unity was this strong was when William Seward, who was Secretary of State for Lincoln, accidentally leaked a memo saying, we have a big standing army, why don't we go conquer Canada? And Canada decided to confederate. And that was the 1860s. That's the last time we had this much unity.
Wow. So last question. I mean, how do you think differently about Canada's future now than compared to a year ago?
We're obviously going to be much more independent, and we're going to live. I think we've always thought of ourselves as a node in a series of international systems. The transatlantic system, of security, the World Trade Organization, free trade agreements. We really want to be an open society. Like, I think that's something that we've really strive towards pretty consistently on both liberal and conservative governments for 50 years, right? Is more openness to the networks of the world. And I think, we're a highly educated population with a lot of resources. This has done very well for us, right? Obviously that world, like not just America, but that world is over. The tilt of America towards authoritarianism is just really kind of the final message that there's no real escaping this. And so Canada is going to be much more itself than it would otherwise be. It will be much more isolation. It's much more fearful. And we're going to have to build up from ourselves in a way that I don't think we've really done since the 60s. I mean, we're sort of like Ukraine in 2014. We're like, okay, how do we prepare? Like, how do we prepare for when it goes off? It really goes off the cliff. We're hustling as hard as we can to get ready for that. And even though there's an election and there's lots of tension between conservatives and liberals, I mean, both of these groups have really the same strategy. It is a retrenchment for sure. It is resistance to America for sure.
I guess you found a common enemy, your political parties, right? It's us. It's America.
Well, look, it's not, listen, we're always going to have a kinship relationship with America. We're always going to have, simply because of geography, we're always going to be attached to America in an inescapable way. But I would never describe America as an enemy. Like, I don't think that is the sentiment here. We're preparing for war, but I mean, God knows you think anyone wants to go to war with America? Like, no, we don't. The question is this going to be forced on us? In which case, we better be ready, right? Certain polls, like if you ask Canadians in August, do you have friendly feelings towards the United States? It was 78%, right? In January, it was 22%.
Wow.
Right. So, there's obviously been a sea change, but Northrop Frye, the great Canadian literary critic, he said, a Canadian is an American who rejects the revolution. We are a very politically different, but basically genetically similar kind of communities, right? And those ties are always going to bind, even in this horror show. Despite the fact that Canada's preparing in all these ways, and they're very real, and we are preparing for economic hardship, and we're preparing to separate ourselves from the United States, I think it would be ingenuine, it would not be true to say that Canadians hate Americans. I just think that would be a really inaccurate thing. I think we love Americans. We're just afraid of them.
Stephen Marche is a Canadian journalist and writer. His latest book is called The Next Civil War. He's joining us from Toronto. Thank you for talking with us, Stephen.
Pleasure.
Say More is a production of the Boston Globe. Today's episode was produced by Anna Kusmer. Our editor is Jim Dow. Our engineer is Zuzair Ahmed. If you like the show, please follow us and leave us a review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can email us at saymore@globe.com. I'm Shirley Leung. Thanks for listening.